Getting my last slide here ready, but no worries. We will kick it off. You can see my slides. Give me a thumbs up. And it's such an honor to be here today on behalf of Fit Pros to share more about what it takes to be a leader. And this is one of my favorite topics. And I have to tell you, as an author of the book called Pause, I'm usually speaking about how to help people stay out of overwhelm. And I think leadership goes right up in that category. And I'm also I'm also someone who's studied leadership, and I feel like people don't talk about it enough. We're expected to lead or show up in these ways, and then there's not a lot of guidance. And some trainings are maybe like this one, it's like a short hour, so you gotta like pack in all that you can, and then maybe remember one or two things. So I'm just thrilled to be here and share what I know, so that all of you can up level to your next level of leadership. So today, no matter where you are in the ranks of the world of how you think you are as a leader, it's about your next level, whether you're the CEO or the first day on the job in a position where you're an individual contributor. And so I just want to congratulate each and all of you who have showed up today, because that to me is a pause. That's an intentional shift in behavior. And that's to me also a way to even know that you are engaging in a way that can help to move you into these ways. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm excited to jump in. So thanks for sharing where everybody's from. I love seeing how global and diverse your audience is. So like thumbs up for that. We're going to keep sharing. If you'd like to take yourselves off of video, I'm a big fan of engagement and interaction and presence. So those are all qualities of a leader, right? So leadership, we're gonna get into it. But if you're up for it and you want to do that, and I understand that may not be possible for many of you, but don't worry about it. We're all in this together, as I like to say. And as Ashley mentioned, there's a survey. I'll put the link up again at the end. But the idea is that you're able to fill this out, let us know what you think, and then hopefully have additional new speakers back here that want to engage and help in other ways. So what we're going to be talking about today, I mentioned a little bit, but also want to share a little bit about who the heck I am. So I work in tech too. I'm actually a full-time Googler. I work in the San Francisco office when there isn't global pandemics and social revolution going on. I've been there 13 years, and I've also built my career in technology. And for me, leadership has been a rocky road. It hasn't always been smooth and easy. And I've really come to my own terms on what it takes to be a leader. But a lot of that has been from my training, where I've studied transformational leadership and coaching, and really like learn this at an experience. I think each and every one of us is capable to be the leaders of our lives. And that's where we can start, thinking about, how do I lead today? How do I show up? And so to me, that's like ground zero, and where we go from there is all possibilities are open. I'm also an expert in emotional and social learning. And that is not by just thinking that might be a good plan. Part of my story is I burned out of Google in about 10 years ago. And so that kind of spawned this whole track for me to go into much more depth of my own leadership and learning, how can I show up differently? Because what I was doing wasn't really working for me. And anyone else have that experience? Like, just show of hands or type yes into the chat, where you think you're on one track, you're showing up, and then you're like, what happened? Why am I showing up in this way now? And this is not what I planned. And it might be in various ways. It might be you do feel burned out or stressed out. It might feel like all of a sudden you're no longer, like, there's a reorg or there's a team change, and like now you're in a completely displaced part of the system. All companies and organizations are systems too. So there's like those types of dynamics at play, in addition to just how we show up. So I'm excited to jump in, and then we'll have hopefully some time for questions at the end, but also know that if we can, we'll also make this interactive, and I might be throwing some things into the questions. And I have a special gift at the end for anyone as we continue and stay for the full hour. Hopefully that'll be something that's exciting for you, and we'll go from there. All right. So let's go for it. And again, you can edit your name if you can, because I know the Lisa Jensen's, we can just go to the more tab and then click rename. Just your first name's fine too. It's great to just know, because then I can tell who's commenting or who's asking a question and things like that. Okay. So here's what we're going to cover. I'm not going to get into this too much right now, but these were the potential topics that I think really hit home for your organization. And so, this is great, because I think a lot of times we skip over this stuff and we're just like, okay, what's our strategy? How do we like get to XYZ? And we got to dial it back sometimes to really just think about, hey, who are we? Like, how am I? Like the basics. And that's where I think it really all starts. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm someone I've been versed in emotional and social learning and EI, emotional intelligence. So a lot of my leadership and a lot of even 2021 leadership is turning more and more towards this number one quality that's desired by recruiters and people in executive and managing positions. Emotional intelligence has been 95% of the number one quality that recruiters look for in seeking out people for filling positions. So, if that's not an indicator of the times, I don't know what is. And that includes things like embodied leadership, which we'll talk about. And then at the end, we'll get to a call to action. So you actually can have a plan as you walk out of here with what your next steps will be to up-level your leadership. Sound good? So give me a thumbs up if we're on track for that. I thought it'd be fun to kind of, kick us off with just a little bit of with humor. So we have to keep our humor in situations. Would you agree? It's so important, because if we aren't going to be able to hold ourselves in a place that's with ourselves laughing sometimes, who are we to show up and maybe, put this all out in the world when we can't really know that we're going to be making mistakes, and we might be failing, or we might be awkwardly fumbling around. Right. And I think this cartoon is a really good snapshot of what leadership we think can be in the workplace, and then what it really maybe isn't. So is leadership about running processes and maximizing shareholder value, or is it more than that now, and who resonates with that? Who resonates with this graphical depiction of, we think we're doing all this great stuff, we're super efficient. And then it's but what's this meaning if we're not really changing or moving the needle in other ways? So I think that's kind of a good depiction of what we're doing here. And I have a reflective question for all of you. So and right now, if you'd like to type into the chat, what does leadership mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? Whatever's coming up for you, if there's a word, go ahead and type it in. There might be a couple words. It might be an adjective. You might think, you might think driven. Right? Think of, and it might be helpful to think of an aspiring leader for yourself. Like if you think of someone that you've held as a model, or someone even, you don't even need to know the person. It might be a transformational leader. What is it that they do that means for you? It could also just be what's coming up for you. So I'm seeing some great things in the chat. Paul says facilitating personal growth. One of my favorites. Motivating is a big one, right? If you're not motivated by other people, how are you able to even get in a place that you're either able to motivate others? And it might be clients, it might be a team you're on, or it could be a team you manage. Coaching, inspiring, I'm seeing growth, communication, influence, setting the example, Lisa Jensen says. That's just the consensus. Enabling great ideas from your team, driving potential. This is great. I love what you're sharing here. Teaching to solve issues. Decisive, relationship builder, dependable, problem solving, mentor. So are we seeing some themes here? I'm curious. I think all of these are on track, really. Remember, it's about what's reflected in our values as people. So if you are resonating with one of these, that's probably something that you hold as a value for yourself. I value motivation, I value personal growth, I value getting coached or coaching. inspiration. Yeah. So nice job. Thank you for sharing with me with that one for a second, because this is what it's all about. It's kind of like we have to know where we are starting to know where we want to go. And so if we just actually have like a collective of like, what does it mean for me? Then a lot of times we can actually get to somewhere either like better, we can get there faster, or we can get there in a way that helps us reach it. Yeah. Okay. So the title of this talk, it's calling all leaders, it's really the underpinning of that is everyone and anyone can be a leader. So my question to you is, what, well, we've got some of the words here, but what does it mean to be a leader in 2021 as well? And I think all of what you're sharing here really resonates with that. I'm sure you'd agree, otherwise you wouldn't have put it in there. And I like to think of it like this. I think leadership is an inside job. Who's with me on that one? Like, leadership is an inside job. And my coach used to tell me that, where it's not about externally looking for things to know that I'm a leader. And yes, that helps. Like maybe there's a book you can read or a talk you can attend, but ultimately it's about, how do I want to show up as a leader? And what does that even mean? Or what does that even look like? Right. I want to define what I think and how I think of leadership for what it means to be a leader. So what is the definition of a leader? And if you want to write this down, there's also a handout, by the way, a couple pages. It's like I call it the leadership cheat sheet. And it's in the, it should be in the calendar as a link. Fit Pros can follow up if you can't find it. But the idea is that you can just write this at the top if you've got it, or just write it down in a notebook. Leadership is, I would love to help you make a guess, but I'll just come right out and say it. Leadership is the ability to influence. There you go. Leadership is the ability to influence. So it's not some lofty thing that you got to learn, and it's not a title that you get, and maybe that's something you already know, or like I've been thinking about. But if you think about it like this, an ability to influence, who can be a leader if that's what we're going with? All of us, right? We are the leaders of our lives, literally. So what is your ability to influence others? And according to Laura Hill, who's a Harvard Business School, she's a professor, she's a speaker, she's a TEDx speaker. She talks about two types of leaders, and I liked her categories here. So one that you might think about is like a visionary leader, right? Someone who sets this pace of like, here's where we're going. It's the organization could become this. Or social architects. Social architects is another way to think about leadership, where there's innovation happening and creating and designing the framework for connecting and interacting so that things can be produced and go forth from there. So I bring all of this into play just to think about the bottom line, which is no one can teach you how to lead. And that's what I mean by it's an inside job. It's a choice on how you show up. And it's a process of self-development that requires lifelong learning. And that's from Dr. Hill, Laura Hill. And you just never know what those challenges are that you might have to face day to day. And that's why we need to know that it's our ability to influence. So even if we're having a day that isn't working, or we're not getting along with our peers or our managers, and we're not seeing eye to eye, it doesn't mean you still can't be an influencer. And so when you think about that, does it matter what your title is? No. Right? It doesn't matter if whatever your title is, you might be that first person day one on the job. Your ability to influence goes and starts from there. You might be a managing director or VP. Your ability can maybe reach more people faster, and it's also for better or for worse, your ability to influence. So everybody type that into the chat. Like leadership is my ability to influence. Just to like integrate this. I'm a big experiential learner, and sometimes I feel like on virtual it's challenging, but just type it in, like whatever that resonates with you. But as a leader, it's my ability to influence. And you can also say it out loud, because if we're on mute, you can do that too. It's my ability to influence. Right on. Good stuff. And so I have a couple hacks for you. Actually, I have 4 hacks, and there's a lot of information in this talk. So the idea is not to like frantically write it all down. This is going to be recorded. I think you'll have a copy of it. But the idea is to just like pick out what resonates with you. So if there's one thing you want to work on, you're like, man, I really resonate with psychological safety, then that's something you can work on in the pause plan, we'll get to at the end. And thank you for sharing on all of this. Yes, I love it. Leadership is my ability to influence. Right on. Thank you. So I wanted to share about this because at Google, this is a huge tenet of ours. And I feel like I couldn't even start a leadership talk without talking about psychological safety in 2021. Who's with me for that? And who's heard of this term? Like, yes, like if you've heard of psychological safety or this virtual, like in a virtual space, we need to create psychological safety. And if this is a new term, that's all good. Really what this means is the ability to create an environment where others feel safe. Okay. And if you don't think about yourself, if you don't feel safe, whether it's a conversation or a meeting or a talk, even like a casual coffee, how do you show up? How's your ability to influence with that? Is it like better or worse? Right? It's like, yeah, it doesn't really jive. So the idea is that we can all make time for human moments. And so here's a couple tips for us on these bullets. And I'm not going to go through each one in detail, but I bring this up because I feel like this is like the foundation as a leader. And so each of us is personally responsible for how we create this, right? Is it your manager's job to create this? Yes. But is it also like if you're not feeling psychologically safe, then how can you address that? Like that's your ability to influence. Maybe there's someone you can talk to, or maybe there's a way that you can show up where there's more eye contact, or not being distracted on with a phone or other things on your computer, other tabs that are open, right? And so I think of these as many attributes of a leader, but these all reflect in some way, shape, or form, I think, an aspect of emotional intelligence as well. But hopefully you can see these, like, asking people how they are really, and then listening, sharing what you feel is comfortable, giving your full attention and being kind to yourself with all of these. And if you're reading all of these, maybe there's one that you want to like take away for yourself. Like, yeah, like I actually, when next time I ask someone how they are, I'm going to like ask them, how is your real life? Right? Like this X. So if there's one there, just type it into the chat. Like, is there one that's really resonating with you? Because these are all really just ideas, basically. And all of them can contribute towards this baseline of psychological safety. And maybe you're like awesome at this already, which is great. And I'm like, but yeah, like think about how much more of those qualities you see in a leader happen when this is established. Right? Yeah. So giving full attention. Yeah. Thank you. Right. So we mentioned the two types of leaders, visionary and social architects. And yes, a leader could have both of those. And again, remember, a vision starts with yourself. And I think I work a lot with my clients with vision, and I work a lot on it myself as vision. And the thing is, we have to have a vision for ourselves as well as potentially the organization or the team. And that's why leadership is an inside job. So many times we put a vision out there of an organization, but we leave ourselves out of it, right? Like, like here's how the org is going to be. What about me? And so I bring that up because I ask you, like, what's your one word? Like maybe you've got one word for this year, today, or the month of April, that would move you forward in your next level of leadership. Maybe you've heard a word already. Maybe there's something that's coming to mind, but go ahead and type that in. If there's a word that you have, type it in, because when you get to actually articulate it or type it in, it's like you're claiming that, like there's your influence right there. Again, like a little bit more of a needle move. And so that's the idea. The leadership requires creating space for you. That's kind of what I get out of this. And I'm using the pause metaphor here, like creating space to think, space to strategize, space to act, and to be. In modern 2021, that ability to influence, do you think that you can do that without those things? You probably could. And I think a lot of us are trained in that way to like get stuff done and be really productive, but how sustainable is it? Or how motivating is that? Right? So we need to find the integration of like the doing and the being a little bit, and having a vision for yourself, even if it's that one word. It might be caring. It might be present. It might be influencer, right? And we're going to get into some more words because we've got some more great like roles that leaders can play too. But I just wanted to be planting some seeds here, because each one of these topics could be like a whole nother hour-long presentation. But the idea is like, I wanted to give like a buffet of different things you could be thinking about. And vision is a big one, because as leaders, we're expected to have a vision, or we have to come up with a vision. I define a vision as what you could become. So it's not who you are today. It's not who the org is today, but it's who you could be. And again, this is like the ability to influence, like what does that mean for you? So having a vision is a great start for yourself. And then you can extrapolate that out to the org or team. But if we don't have a vision for ourselves, then how do we do that? Like the org, is it not made up of people, right? And we can do it from the top down, but how much more buy-in is there? How much more influence is there if we are collectively like doing that from the bottom up? And it starts with us. And that's why it's an inside job as well. And a lot of this is maybe not what you would think of as traditional leadership, but that's why it's 2021 and we have a lot of change going on and things are shifting. So we need to show up a little differently too sometimes. All right, so let me see here if we can do this. I'm gonna pause my slides, but let me, I have to make sure this is updated. So give me 1 second. I think the code might need to change, but if you open up a browser window and go to menti.com, and then you'll see a slide there, and let me know if that code works. 813-09884. Let me type it in. 813-09884. Menti.com, and just type in the chat if that's working. Isn't it working? Doesn't work. Okay, give me 1 second because it's easy to fix. I just need to update the code. Bear with me. Sorry about this. And all right, let's see. I think I got it. Okay, sorry. Here's the new code. Ready? 5893004. That should work. And this is the question. So what roles does a leader play in an organization? So these are roles. Think about roles. Like we've talked about a bunch about different things. You've maybe said it in the chat about what you think of as a leader. Just go ahead and type it in. We won't spend too much time on this, but we'll start to see a word cloud form. Why I wanted to do this for you was because this is a reflection of, I think, the present time of your organization of A10 and where you are when it comes to leadership and what the roles are that are feeling right now probably pretty strong or present with others. Are people able to type in words? I'm getting a no, even with the new code, huh? Okay, there we go. You can see the code on the screen and in the chat too. And so the idea is everyone can type up to 5 words. So if you've got more than one, type it in. I'm going to take a screenshot of this and you'll get it back. And this is data for you. This is understanding where you are right now so that you can move into places that potentially either are in areas that you may not have on here or strengthen these that are also already doing well. So I'll give you a moment.
I don't think the code is working. I'm in, but there's no place to type. This is the real Lisa talking.
Hi, everybody.
Lisa, I think if you refresh, it'll work. That's what I had to do.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the troubleshooting there, everybody.
Back to the code again, the place to put in the code. So I'll try it again.
Menti.com, yeah.
I was in.
And then refresh.
Submit. Okay, it's working now.
Okay, thanks. And apologies for the code expiration there. All right, so we're getting some good stuff. So I see mentors strongly there, like a big mentor, capital, well, no capitals, but influencer, listener, guidance, visionary. The ones that are smaller, I have less frequency from the typing, but we're starting to populate it here, and we've got 30 responses so far. So great. Well, as you keep typing it in, screenshot that for you. So this is present day A10 pretty much, if you're here and you're like having these talks. So just good data to know. Remember, it's not necessarily like changing everything overnight, but it's also about, here's where we are, and then who could we become, right? Like where do we go from here? So you can if you're still working on it, you can keep typing those in, but I'm going to go back to the slides. So thank you for playing there. And the reason I asked that is here, according to Kevin Eikenberry Consulting, there's 10 leadership roles, and some of these may look familiar to you. Some of them might feel and be like, wow, I forgot that one was a leadership role. And these are on the handout as well. So I'm not going to go through each one of these, but they're in no particular order as well. And I know many of you said coach. That would be also, like, I would say, a mentor, active listener there. Just note that on number 10, because that's actually a big one that I want to get into a little bit. And so you'll have these on record, but just know that there are many roles that we can take on, right? And it's about potentially which ones resonate with you. So maybe there's some that already play to your strengths, and maybe there's some that you're like, yeah, I really could use some brushing up on something else. And remember, it's not about anything else other than you, right? It's the ability to influence. Influence is one of the roles here, but there's also many other ones. But remember, it's not about your title. It's not about whether you have a team or not. This is just about leadership. And in the spirit of listening, I have a quote here. You may know the name well, Stephen Covey. He says, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Who's guilty of that one? Like, who feels like, yeah, I've done that. I think I've probably done that today, maybe like 5 times, right? Like, just go ahead and type in like, yes, if that's been on your agenda. Because that's the thing, like, we want to have the answer. We want to problem solve. We're kind of wired for that. So I want to remember, this is a huge attribute of leadership, right? So the other thing to remember here is active listening, right? That was one of the roles here. I put active in parentheses there because they had listener, but I'm like, well, you could listen, but not really do much with it. But what if you were actively listening? Really, all that means is fully concentrating on what's being said versus just hearing that message. And then the idea is you make a conscious effort when you're listening, like you're literally bringing in your thinking brain, right? Which takes effort. It's hard. You can't multitask. And you're hearing what, not only those words, but you've got the full picture of that person. Maybe what's their expression, what's their tone, the complete message that comes in. And as a leader, as a leader in your life, and in an A10, I just want to pose that question. How are you doing in that area? And my sense is we all have work to do in that area. At least I know I do. Okay, so back to the roles, like here's some great questions, and this is part of the plan at the end, but I want to just plant these seeds again, where you think about these roles. Which are those roles are you most confident in filling? Which one do you feel like this one I do a lot of? I love this role, right? It's kind of like you love it. It's your passion. And then there might be one like, where do I need to fill in the gaps? Maybe I'm like, I don't really strategize a lot. I just kind of keep doing stuff. I don't really take time to reflect or come up with a bigger picture holistically, things like that. And the third question here is like, what could I do differently? What are the steps that I could take to fill in those roles? And so these are great questions to just think about, so that you can think about opportunities that might be coming in the week or even the coming week on what you could be doing differently to move into those things. Okay, and there's another quote here. I've already talked about Dr. Linda. Management is a journey, not a destination. Okay, so we all know this figuratively, but like, how often do we are we just like, I just want the promotion? Like, I know at Google, like that's what everyone's wired to say. I just want to be promoted, or I just wish I could do whatever. And it's like, yes, and there's ways to know that it's an ongoing development cycle. And that's what Linda says. You know, we have to manage ourselves first and foremost. So think about yourself as, you know, your own influencer for you, having that vision. And then Linda also talks about managing your network. Like, I have to not just manage myself, I have to manage the people I'm connecting with, which is up, down, and across the organization. And then I also have to manage a team, whether it's my formal authority as a manager, or I'm actually just, you know, a member of it. It's because that's me showing up fully if I really want to dig in and be my ability and maximize my ability to influence. And a couple aspects I wanted to share too, you know, this concept of managing versus leadership. My question to you is, do you need to be a manager to lead? Like, we've already kind of covered this. So you probably know, like me, no. And I want to cover 3 aspects where I think there's some myths. Like, I wanted to call this section like myth busting for leadership. You know, like in this one case, managing, you know, leadership vision versus goals. Like, which one do you think leaders gravitate towards more, leading versus managing? Just type it into the chat. Vision versus goals. And this is kind of a fun way to like think about this. I'm kind of gamifying it here for us, but you know, they're obviously both good. They're both helpful, but leaders, what would you say between leaders and versus managers? Okay, yes, I see some vision coming in. So the idea is that leaders create the vision and managers create the goals. And that's a way to think about it. But basically the idea is, you know, this bigger picture, that forward thinking is what I think of with leadership, and maybe you do too, but managers are more about setting those targets and measuring and achieving goals. And that's all good. I'm not saying that's not that is a really good thing. They control the situations to reach and exceed their objectives, right? Okay. How about this one? So AOC is you know, agents of change. That's my little shorthand. So what about leading? Who falls into the leadership? Agents of change or status quo? You can go ahead and type that in. Agents of change or status quo. This one might be a little easier, right? AOC, yeah. Agents of change. Leaders are agents of change, and managers maintain the status quo. You can be a leader as a manager and like be the agent of change as well, but I'm just defining it a little differently here. So managers stick with what works. They might refine the system, the structures, and the processes to make them better. But an agent of change, that is true leadership of like what could be different for us. And it doesn't need to be about productivity. It could be about that human aspect, to be more motivated so that people can produce more. Does that make sense? And here's our last one. Leading is leadership. Is it more authentic, or is it more what I would call conforming? Is it, are leadership truly authentic or conforming? Right. And so again, this is like in our mental mind map. What is a manager versus a leader? And so, yeah, you've got it like authentic. So leaders are unique. Managers, if they're just like fitting that manager hat on and nothing else, like they're doing their job, like punching in their ticket, managers copy. Okay. And again, it's not like this is what managers do, but I'm just differentiating it in our minds so that we can kind of like parse out like, okay, yeah, like leadership is this, and that's why it's so different. Like, and I can think of myself, if you're a manager, you can think of yourself as a leader so that you can encapsulate both of these qualities, right? Remember those roles. Leaders are willing to be themselves. They're self-aware and work actively to build their unique brand. And they're comfortable in their own shoes. They're willing to stand out, and they're authentic and transparent. So transparency, right? Like giving what's so, stating truths. Maybe there's something you don't agree with and you state a truth. That's true leadership. On the other hand, like historical management would mimic competencies and behaviors that they learn from others and adopt their leadership style rather than defining it. So there's a couple of ways to think about it, and there's many more of those types of traits and thinking. But the idea is that you can start to see like, okay, yeah, if I'm a manager, yeah, that is a little different than leadership, and I can work to bring them both together in an integrated style that could be both if you needed to have that. And you do need to conform, I believe, and be authentic. We need to belong. That's a huge human need, and so fitting in matters. And so, you know, making sure your team feels safe again is a big part of that too. And they're both important, but my stress was more about like, you know, leadership requires that authenticity a lot, being true to who you could become. Right? Here's a question for you. Does innovation matter anymore? Go ahead and type in what you think. Yes or no? Does innovation matter anymore? This one's probably pretty obvious too, right? Like correct. Yes. Yes, it matters. Type it in if you haven't yet. Like, yes, innovation matters. But how do we address this? Right. And like we're seeing stress and burnout happen at unprecedented rates. So the key is we have to rise to the occasion. Linda Hill, the woman I've been talking about, she has a great TED Talk. It's called How to Manage for Collective Creativity. You can just look her up, Linda Hill, Harvard. You'll see a TED Talk from her, How to Manage for Collective Creativity. And basically, what she says is we need to be leading from a space where it is that social architect. It's creating the spaces and the connections that help foster that creativity that can help with innovation. Leading in this world and creating and allowing innovation. And I know that's a huge value for A10. It's about creating the space where people are able and willing to work hard and problem solve, right? But what does that look like even now when we're virtual, right? Like how do we even do that? So there might not, there's no like paved magical answer, but it does take a village. It takes a community, and that's the ability to influence coming back around again, right? Like people want to belong. Then that takes visionary leadership and needs to be good at that. We all need to be like upping our game in that, basically. So ask yourself, like what is it that you could do in that social architect leadership role that could help to create that space, that town square type of interaction that's very helpful usually with innovation, because usually what happens is that creativity, it sparks with one person and then someone else might have a contribution and then another person has something else. That's typically how it goes. So innovation definitely matters, but as a leader, it's about how we can foster that culture and allow that to emerge in the space that is challenged right now. And it takes all of us to up our game, up level our agents of change game, so that we can have more of it. But it's not easy. I don't have the answers here, but I think I'm hoping that I can plant some seeds here for all of you. Yeah, like delegate. I love it, Nadal. Yeah, like what are the things that you could do or maybe have off your plate so that you could focus differently? And emotional intelligence here. Anyone know who this is? It's on the slide. This is Dr. Daniel Goleman. I mentioned emotional intelligence is the number one attribute that recruiters are seeking out in hiring, especially in the technology interest. The definition of emotional intelligence is here on the slide. This is from Daniel Goleman, and I'm certified as a coach in his program, the Goleman EI method, and we work a lot in this where we know one's internal states, preferences, resources, and solutions. He wrote the book, literally, Emotional Intelligence, 26 years ago. So the term it's only been around in our world for 25 years, and he actually borrowed it from two other researchers who were looking at this from an industrial standpoint and a socio behavioral standpoint, and he came up with 4 competencies that are listed here. So just know this is like a new field, and this is why it doesn't feel super traditional. If you went to business school or didn't go to business school, even 20 years ago, no one knew about this. It really wasn't a topic, and now it's a buzzword. We hear it all the time. And yes, it is more important than IQ, Richard. They're both important, but emotional quotient, EQ, is now showing that we need to relate to others in ways that are important. And check this out in the yellow box. When we are fired up, like when we're triggered in those emotional moments, like maybe we're just feeling reactive or we're angry or just like that fear is setting in, or anxiety. Our emotions are like the superhighway of our nervous system. We respond 400 times faster than our intellectual brain, and our intellectual brain actually goes offline. It's kind of like I'm gonna like hang out over here because we have something else to deal with. So just know that like we're wired for emotional responses. So this isn't gonna go away. Our job is to learn this now, wherever you're at, so that we can show up in these ways to influence that allow others and ourselves to be in that zone of genius, in that zone of innovation and productivity that we all know we can get to. So this is the number one leadership skill that I've been hammering home. The idea is there's these 4 competencies. You can see them in the boxes on the left. And so I just want to state that that orange box, self-awareness, I would say, if I were to redo this slide myself, it'd be like a triangle, it'd be like a pyramid. And on the very base, it'd be like a huge block of orange. Because if you don't have that awareness about yourself, like, how am I feeling? How am I doing? What's my state right now? Then how can I relate to others or even be present for others, because I'm so maybe involved with what's happening inside or with what I'm doing. And that's a skill, by the way. I mentioned I'm trained in this area, and I didn't know any of this. And then I've been learning this over the last 8 years. And I can tell you, if I can learn it, anyone can learn it. Social awareness. So self-awareness is the ability to relate to yourself and knowing what's going on. I call it how to do things and be at the same time. Then you've got self-management, the next level, which is really how do I regulate those emotions? How do I manage when I am triggered? How do I show up when I'm feeling frustrated or I'm afraid of this, what's going to happen to my team or this product or my client? Social awareness is actually the skill of reading other people. So this is that ability to influence others in the full active listening zone. You could say, I noticed you look a little I noticed you look a little forlorn today. I don't know if you'd say forlorn, but you might say tired. Or I noticed you seem a little tense. And that might be from body language. And we have to be really attentive while we're on these screens, right? Relationship management is social skills with others. So that's you in the relationship of it. So saying that out loud, actually calling someone out if you're seeing them tense, or you expressing vulnerably, you saying you feel tense, and then having an engagement and interaction that way. So all of this is I think really big qualities for a 2021 leader. And again, we can all learn that. And you being here is a great step towards that. So no matter what your practices are or what you're learning, you're on a great track, because this is where we're going with everything regarding leadership these days, right? And so these are emotional intelligence inspired attributes of leaders, right? So you can see here a lot of these in bullets. Even just that self-awareness, I'll call it EI. Transparency, we've talked about. Being vulnerable allows other people to be vulnerable. So think about it like this: if you're a leader and you have ability to influence, if you're sharing something that feels a little shaky, you're oh, that's personal, I don't know why they'd want to know that. Maybe that would help someone relate to you, right? Maybe that would help to build trust. Back to that psychological safety. Vulnerability is huge in that area. And if you allow that, if you go first, if you dip your toe in the water first, then you give others that permission to do it back. But you got to take that risk. You got to take that step, and you can start small. It doesn't have to be a big, crazy thing you share. It might just be I've had a crappy day, right? Whatever that is for you. Being in integrity, huge, sharing what you think your truth might be would be an example of that. Being authentic, being true to who you could become is the definition I use for authenticity. So how do you show up that helps you feel a little real, right? Like being honest with someone, or being open and curious about something because you are triggered and you're I just want to know what's going on, because I'm not really understanding this notion or this thought, this concept. Empathy is a big one. We talk a lot about empathy. It's another buzzword right now, especially with COVID, especially with social and social justice. Empathetic means your ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Being a leader, I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but it's a pretty big part of leadership these days, I would say, especially in these times. Would you agree? Yeah. And embodied leading, I want to share this one too. So this is my 4th hack, embodied leading. So what is embodied leading? Okay. And so really the idea is that this is about it. I call it in leadership congruence, being in integrity with yourself. So what your actions are, whatever you're putting out there in the world, they reflect your values and your commitment, especially under pressure. And think back to that leading versus managing job, like authentic versus conforming, right? So when you stay embodied, meaning you're present in your body under pressure, you show up fully, you're in it. Others do you think others are attracted to that? Or do you think others are like, who's this guy? Who's this lady? Who's this person? My sense is, think about a leader who has shown up for you that's been an embodied leader. Maybe it was a teacher or a professor or someone you admire in that first, the qualities of a leader we put in the chat early on. That is when we are enabled to be embodied as a leader. That's what we would call embodied leadership in action. That's alignment. Like, that's you showing up fully in integrity with yourself, but also inspiring others, because you're putting a stake in the ground for what you believe in. And there's ways to do that, right? With the social and emotional intelligence, like, you can relate to others. It doesn't mean like it's my way or the highway. No, like, that's not going to fly. So how do you relate, but also help to communicate what's coming up for you? And that can include things like the self-awareness. How, like, what's going on in my body? Oh, my heart is like out of control right now. It's beating through my chest. That must mean I'm nervous. That must mean I'm a little bit afraid to potentially share what I really want to share. So maybe I can take a time out, like 2 minutes, and just gather my thoughts, right? So do you see the connection here between all of these qualities that we're talking about today, and then how they can reflect when you are a leader with yourself and others, right? Yeah, and so this is like a holistic impression across our whole brain. We need our thinking brain to be an embodied leader. We need our emotional center, the amygdala. We need that online, and we need basically what's called the insula. Again, detailed here in my neurobiology, but that's what we need to read the body and like figure out. Yeah, like, oh, my heart is beating really fast, and maybe I should just take a 2-minute break, because that's going to matter when I come across and make a point that I really want to stress and help people know that this matters and we need to do it this way, or something like that. So we're coming up on our end of our presentation here, and let's just take a breath together. Pausing. We've covered a ton. I know, like, I'm throwing a bunch of stuff at everybody, and just know that, again, it's not about absorbing all this today, because that would just be not realistic. That'd be unrealistic. The idea is to plant some seeds. This is the journey. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination. And all of these can be things that you can work on in a long-term personal development plan, or with your manager, or as a team. You could think of what those roles are you'd want to start to do, or all of these things. The idea here is that you can do what you need to do with these afterwards. But one way to do that is this final slide, these final 2 slides. And this is again in the handout. The handout also has the pictures of the emotional intelligence 4 quadrants, so you can take notes on that. And it has the roles of a leader. It also has embodied leadership, and it has the EI values. So you've got a lot of data there. You can go back to it and like review it. You don't have to go through all of this, or you can make notes on it and kind of say, like, here's some follow-up I want to check into. So here's our call to action, our CTA. Are you up for a CTA? I don't know if you use CTA or AI. I had AI in there first, but I'm like, maybe that's like, I don't know. It seemed like you were more a CTA group. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You tell me. I use both, but I think call to action is like more of a universal term these days. But here's what we're going to do. So if you've got your handout, there's space for this on the handout. And if not, I invite you to take a piece of paper, because I know we're always on different things. You can open up a Google Doc if that's helpful, or any doc, I guess. I'm a little partial to Google. But the idea is we're going to create literally in 1 page a really simple plan to start doing something in this realm. Who's with me? Everybody excited? If you're excited for a call to action, type it into the chat. CTA, yeah. And also, I'm curious, is it CTA here? Is A10 about CTAs? What do you guys like? I don't know. So we're going back to the very first thing. Write down the roles that you are most confident in filling. So this is on the handout. Remember the 10 roles a leader plays? It was coach, it was facilitator, it was many different things. So go back to, it's in the handout if you've got it handy. So go ahead and just type that down, type it out in that. Write down what you're most confident in. And it might be 1 role, it might be a couple roles. Usually like 1 or 2 would be great. Do you want me to show that slide right now? I can. If not, you can do that. I'm not sure what would be most helpful, but hopefully you have the handout and it's all there. So you can kind of toggle between both things. Okay. So maybe you are a really good coach and you love guiding people there, but you're not quite sure like who needs it, or like that might be the communication side is the next, or like that might not be the strength. The next question is, what attributes would I consider strengths? What attributes would I consider strengths? So let me go back because it is in the handout. So these were the roles, like the first bullet, and then the attributes are here. So which of these would you consider a strength? And maybe there's one that's not on here. That's why there's an other on the handout. Maybe there's something else that you consider a strength. Like I know this is what I'm good at. And if you're thinking like, I don't know what I'm good at, or I don't have any strengths or anything, my sense is maybe that's the case, but my guess is there's probably something that you are really good at. And it's just about taking that and just trying it on. And maybe it's something that you've heard from others. Maybe it's something that you think, but there's no right or wrong here. So I invite you to just be open and write something down. Okay, so does everyone have something there? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate my embodied leadership? 1 being low, 10 being high. How am I doing as an embodied leader? Remember, that's your congruence. That's you acting and speaking up what you are doing, but it's also in alignment with you, being truthful, really like building that into your cellular memory. And again, there's no right or wrong. You don't need to be a high score here. It's really just about today, like where you are. Because the idea is, again, if we don't know where we are, how do we know where we're going, right? It's just like a map. And I think there's on the handout another question on the scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate my emotional intelligence? So those are those 4 boxes. And just guess, like take your best guess. And actually it's 1 to 5 on the handout. I changed that, sorry. So it's 1 to 5. All right, and so then the last bullet here, once you've got those done, what steps will I take to become stronger at filling these roles and building these skills? So just think about this. What would you do differently maybe? Or is there an idea that you can take up that would help you build that in? Maybe it's talking to someone. And this is the way that we're gonna roll. So here's the thing. I'm all about active, as I mentioned, active assignments and experiential learning, because if we're not building it into our doing and practice, then we're just simply knowledge. It's simply learning and we're not growing. Does that make sense? Growing is doing things differently. So here's the thing, in the next 7 days, so in the next week, your job is to find 1 or 2 opportunities max to grow where you are feeling potentially that less than confident, where maybe those things you didn't write down are coming up, whether it's attending a training, having a meeting, a learning opportunity, or what you're curious about. Okay. And then like extra credit, share this with a buddy or someone on your team or your manager. Like this could be your development plan. Something you want to work on this quarter as you see fit. It's all about what you want. But again, remember those attributes of a leader. Leading agents of change and your ability to influence might require taking a risk. It just might, maybe a little one. It doesn't have to be a big risk. And you even just writing this down is a huge step towards that. So remember, it's about the little things too. And that is your pause plan. So you have something that you can go out with here. And who's excited to jump into this and kind of like delve into your next level of leadership? Just type in yes to the chat or raise your hand. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we're coming up on time here. I don't have a lot of time for questions, but just real quickly, this is my free gift. I mentioned it in the beginning. I'm offering, I have 4 slots. There's not a lot. 30-minute inner leader breakthrough session. So what this is a 30-minute call with me, and it'll be basically I'll learn about your challenge, like maybe it's your pause plan. You want to talk about what's going on, but the idea is like, you're interested to grow and you like, you want a little support, and I would be honored to help you. And what I would do is I recommend potentially one tool that will help you and recommendations going forward. And that's just, in 30 minutes, you can't do too much, but I think that can be a great way to go. And this is my Calendly link. So it's easy to remember, tinyurl.com/pause now. All right. And I put it into the chat as well. And then lastly, the feedback survey, we all want to remember that. It is here. Where is it? FitPro feedback survey. We'll put it back into the chat again, but please share that as well. It takes 2 minutes. And questions, we've got 1 minute for questions. And I know that's not a lot of time, but anyone have a burning question? I'll take one question here at the end, if there's a brave soul. If not, then I would love to hear what your biggest takeaway is. Go ahead and type into the chat. What's your biggest takeaway from today? What's the one thing that you're taking away? Thanks for sharing, by the way. I know this is being a vulnerable leader, sharing things in the chat. Being fully present, being self-aware. Yes. Yep. And remember, it starts with you. That's you being the leader you were born to be and growing into that as you are stepping into that vision of who you could become. Self-awareness, leadership takes practice, being fully present. Great. Well, thanks everyone. I know we're at time. I want to honor that for you. And it's been an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody. You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.